Well, hello, everybody. We're going to get started here in a minute. So appreciate you being with us. We'll give other folks a minute to get in. Hello, Linda. Good to see you. Hi, Carol. Emily, are you at the beach? No.
I'm in my office at home. I wish.
Good try. Hey, Neil.
Hello.
Good to see you. Terrence, I think we can go ahead and start, and we'll just keep letting people in as they come on in.
That sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Thank you for all you guys being with us today at our 10 at the Top in the July chat. It's hard to believe that it's almost August. It seems like the last 5 months have flown by, but obviously we're at a very important part of our country's history and also our state's history. And today we have the pleasure of hearing, we all know that we're heavily dependent on manufacturing in this state. And we have our guest today is Sarah Hazard, and Sarah is the CEO of the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance. And she's going to give us a unique view on the state of our manufacturing community in our state. Obviously, as I mentioned before, manufacturing is what stirs a lot of our drinks in this state. And when I look at even our leadership level participants, a lot of things that happen in this state happen in the manufacturing sector. And so I am interested myself in hearing Sarah's take on where we are during the COVID crisis and her look on how we navigate through this and through the future. So again, thank you for being with us today, Sarah, and I'll turn the program over to you.
All right. Terrence, thank you for that introduction. I appreciate you all having me today. As Terrence mentioned, my name is Sarah Hazard, and I'm President and CEO of the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance. We are a statewide trade association that's dedicated exclusively to the interest of the manufacturers in our state. Next slide, please. So I'm going to give you all a little bit of our history, if you'll indulge me for a second. Our organization has been around for over 100 years. We were founded in 1902 as the Cotton Manufacturers Association of South Carolina. And this photograph is from one of the earliest gatherings of our organization. So while our manufacturing heritage is rooted in textiles, we eventually expanded our organization and our industry in the state across all sectors. And now today, we're proud to have automotive and aerospace, tires and pharmaceuticals and chemicals and many other industry sectors that call South Carolina home. In our organization today, we have around 200 manufacturing member companies that represent more than 80,000 South Carolinians that are employed within the industry. And just to give you a snapshot, our members do range from the small to medium to large manufacturers across all of the various regions in our state. And our mission at SCMA is to advance the state's manufacturing industry and the quality of life of all South Carolinians, and to be the voice of the South Carolina manufacturing community. So next slide, please. So how do we do this? Through legislative and regulatory advocacy is one way. We represent manufacturers before the South Carolina legislature and our state's regulatory agencies. We have a dedicated government affairs person who advocates for all of our policy priorities, which tend to really focus around workforce and education, taxes and economic development, environmental issues and energy issues, infrastructure, and liability protection. We also, through education and training, offer various educational and informational conferences and meetings and events and programs that focus on certain key areas for manufacturers. Everything from human resources to plant managers and manufacturing operations to workforce development, safety issues, environmental, tax and economic development again, energy, legislative and government relations, and just any other specific industry sectors or regional matters as well. And then also through special initiatives such as our SC Future Makers program, which is our SCMA signature workforce development initiative. And it connects South Carolina manufacturing companies directly with high school students, technical college students, and four-year college students to tell the story of South Carolina manufacturing careers and also to demonstrate the paths that students can pursue to have a career in manufacturing and have a bright future. And then lastly, through strategic connections, our members are able to make, through our organization and our members, they have the opportunity to develop relationships with other manufacturers. They can gain industry insights, exchange ideas and best practices. So also through the connections that they can make through our organization. Next slide, please. So let's get to some data to give you a picture of South Carolina's manufacturing landscape. This might be what you really want to hear. So 12% of the state's workforce is employed in manufacturing, which is about, as you see, 245,000 people. Not everyone knows that South Carolina is home to more than 5,000 manufacturing facilities, and around 87% of those are smaller operations of less than 50 employees. Manufacturing also pays pretty well in South Carolina. The average salary exceeds $60,000, and this is factoring in the various levels of occupations, from production levels to engineering to even executive levels. Manufacturing also in South Carolina has a tremendous reach globally. We have exports in 2018 that exceeded $33 billion. And then lastly, I'd say that the impact of manufacturing is meaningful and has a ripple effect across all communities in our state. On average, for every one manufacturing job that is created, it creates or supports an additional 3 jobs. Next slide, please. So it goes without saying that the impact of COVID-19 on the economy has been unprecedented. Never before have our state or our country seen such an extreme economic contraction in such a short period of time. South Carolina, we had a historically low unemployment rate in December of 2019 at 2.3%. So when the COVID-19 outbreak came, the impact of that was just widespread, and the shutdowns did occur. So the unemployment rate jumped to 12.8% at its highest, you can see in April. So to put that in perspective, more than 685,000 South Carolinians have filed for unemployment benefits since mid-March. And the total payout to date since then in unemployment benefits has exceeded $3.3 billion. So manufacturing was never mandated by the state government to close our operations. One of the most important things for manufacturers has always been safety, and it continues to be a top priority for manufacturing. So many companies have implemented the wearing of face masks and face shields, use of hand sanitizer and social distancing and other safety protocols in their plants. And at SCMA, we've been very focused on keeping the line of communication open for our members between the state health officials and the companies in the state. One of the interesting aspects that came out of the challenges that COVID-19 presented was the retooling and development of personal protective equipment products that manufacturers could produce that suddenly, as we all saw, became very scarce and in high demand. So we are proud that we have many South Carolina companies that are now producing isolation gowns and hand sanitizer, disinfectants, face masks and face shields, and other PPE related items. So manufacturers really were just proud that they stepped up when they were really needed. And thankfully that doesn't appear to be slowing down at this time. The next slide. So manufacturing has been impacted from an employment standpoint, but it wasn't as hard hit from an employment reduction, I guess, focus when the COVID-19 outbreak occurred as maybe some of the other industry sectors were. As illustrated in this graph that we're looking at now, manufacturing saw a dip in April of 2020 of around 13,000 associates, but the industry is bringing associates back now, and we've seen employment figures increase by close to 3,000 since the start of the outbreak. Next slide, please. So I think it's interesting to point out and to put into perspective the different sectors that were impacted by COVID-19 in our state. Hospitality and leisure have been the hardest hit industry from the employment standpoint. This is, obviously because of the mandatory shutdowns, which were necessary at the time. And at its hardest hit period, hospitality and leisure saw a 47% reduction in employment among our South Carolinian employees. But I will say that the industry is showing signs of recovery, and thankfully so is South Carolina. The next slide, please. So what are our top priorities in moving forward in rebuilding our state's economy? I'll start with limited liability protections. We have been working with several other business organizations in the state to ask our state legislature to implement limited and temporary liability protections from COVID-19 related lawsuits. We believe that businesses need confidence and certainty in order to make a full recovery. Both the South Carolina House and Senate have set up committees and have held hearings that have been discussing liability reforms. And we were hoping that they were going to take the issue up when they returned to session for a couple of days in June. Unfortunately, that did not happen. And now we are pushing for them to take up the issue when they return for about 2 weeks in September. Secondly, the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund. When COVID-19 hit and unemployment claims in our state and really everywhere skyrocketed, the state's UI Trust Fund took a substantial hit. So we were very pleased when the General Assembly came back in June that they allocated $500 million to the trust fund through the CARES Act spending plan to try to replenish the fund. We are continuing to closely monitor the trust fund because even with that additional $500 million, we do anticipate that unemployment insurance taxes may still have to increase. And so we are really, unless there's any additional dollars put into that fund, we're going to have to brace for the impact that that's going to have on South Carolina businesses. Next, the business license fee standardization issue. This is something that we've been working on for several years. Reforms to the business license fees and how they are collected in South Carolina. This issue actually made the most progress that it's ever made this past session when a compromise was reached between the business community and local governments. The legislation actually implements a statewide standard for how business license taxes are calculated, sets a uniform date for when they are due, and it sets up a way for the taxes to be collected online in one central portal. The bill passed the House, but was not taken up in the Senate due to COVID-19 ended the session early, but we are optimistic that the Senate may take it up when they return in September. So we feel that this is just a pro-business issue that's come a long way, and it's something that they being the General Assembly can do for businesses of the state as we're working to recover and rebuild our economy. And then lastly, workforce and education. Prior to COVID-19, the #1 challenge faced in South Carolina manufacturers was finding a ready, skilled, and available workforce. The challenge now from a workforce standpoint is that there are so many dislocated workers in South Carolina. How are they going to be able to connect to new opportunities, and what education and training will they need? Manufacturers are starting to bring back people. And we feel like the current environment presents an opportunity for manufacturers to recruit people that may not have been in the industry before. So education and workforce is still a top priority for manufacturers, and because we're going to need people to have the necessary skills and training to do these types of jobs. And then I'll mention education reform. It was a top priority during the legislative session. There was legislation that was moving that ultimately ended up coming to a halt due to COVID-19 as well. So we're going to need to bring the issue back up at some point. The reality is we've got to do better in South Carolina. Our students need to be able to perform better from a reading and math standpoint. And teachers, need to be paid more. Obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty as schools are reopening in the COVID-19 environment. But we as a state, need to do everything that we can to make sure that we are preparing our students so that they can have a bright future. So we hope to see the issue, revisited in the future. Next slide, please. Just in conclusion, I just want to say, despite the challenges and what has occurred over the past few months, I truly believe that South Carolina is in a good position to recover. What the recovery looks like and exactly how long it's going to take is difficult to really pinpoint and define. But with the foundation of manufacturing in our state and the cooperative spirit, as we as South Carolinians have, I think to help rebuild our economy is something certainly possible, and that we're in a good spot to bounce back. And SMA is going to continue to advocate and be the voice for our manufacturers in the state along the way. So with that, I just want to say thank you for the time and for the opportunity to share with you today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah, and appreciate it. I think there's some questions in the chat, and I'll turn it over to Dean just to kind of lead us through that discussion. Dean?
Great, thank you, Terrence. Yes, a great question from David Field with Collier's International asking, and I'm going to just read it because he asked about 3 questions here. But first, Sarah, what are your thoughts related to the reshoring of manufacturing discussion? As part of that, will protection of intellectual property and other positives here in the U.S. outweigh the cheaper costs related to labor and less regulations found in other places, other countries?
So we're certainly seeing manufacturers looking to reshore, looking at South Carolina. I think we as a state are poised to receive those companies that want to move here and locate here. I think it's an opportunity. I think things like making sure that we in our state pass liability protection legislation to send the signal that we're open for business, and is something that the state needs to make sure that we do. So, but yes, we are seeing it, and I think that we're going to continue to see more of it. And I think South Carolina is ready to grow.
And obviously, we're selfish thinking here about the upstate, but given the manufacturing history and so many companies here in this region, how do you think the upstate is positioned to capitalize on that opportunity?
The upstate has a strong history of manufacturing from our textile days, and we still have a very strong and heavy presence of manufacturing in your part of the state. So I think that continue doing what you're doing and providing an environment that manufacturers want to locate in. And I think just the community itself, the community of manufacturers that are there, the employees, the workforce, all of that makes for a great place for manufacturers to do business.
Great. And everyone, please feel free, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and I'll share them with Sarah. We did have a question. You put in very early, you showed the amount of exports that come from South Carolina. And we have a question specifically about, specifically about how much of those are BMWs versus everyone else. But so what are the top exporters from here in South Carolina?
Actually, I don't have that data at my fingertips right now, but Dean, I'd be happy to get back with you on that, and I can share that with the group.
But certainly BMW and Michelin here in this region are near the top, and I'm sure there's some of the others in the low country as well, but certainly BMW and Michelin are among those from here, and we have a number of others. But yes, would be great to. I'm sure we can find that information. But thank you, Sarah. So I have another question about what are you hearing from some of the manufacturers and things. A lot of the concern and question is around kids going back to school or not, and there's at various levels, well, we have to have them go back because of the workforce and and parents and things like that. Are you hearing from your manufacturers that being an issue, and are any of them doing anything unique around helping their employees with daycare or student services, or anything that can make it easier so people are able to stay and go to work and not be concerned about their students?
So yes, I mean, the answer is yes. We are hearing from companies that are concerned about, over the summer about childcare issues, and then obviously education and schools reopening, and what the different formats are going to be, school district by school district. I think companies are working to accommodate employees or change schedules, different shifts to try to work with their workforces to the best of their ability. So certainly it's a challenge, and everyone's trying to figure it out, and it is definitely a conversation that we are having right now.
Great. A couple more questions. One is, are there any specific sectors of manufacturing that have been hardest hit by COVID?
I would probably say the automotive sector has took a pretty tough hit. Just being the global economy that we're in, with some of the automotive manufacturers around the world that had to shut down operations, the trickle-down effect through the supply chain that had in different countries where they were shut down longer than others, just had a ripple effect. So I do think the automotive industry took a hit, but I think we're starting to see some positive signs, and are hoping that they're coming back.
Great. We know here Milliken, and I think even Michelin is doing some, and others are reworking some of their facilities to be able to do some PPE manufacturing. And we have a question about, do you know what percentage of the lost manufacturing during COVID has been replaced by PPE manufacturing? And do you envision that continuing to be something that will be produced here in South Carolina?
So I don't know the percentage, but what I would say is a number of the manufacturers that did transition over to make PPE, it was really a lifesaver for some of those companies. They were able to keep their employees employed and working and doing really well with it. And so some of these companies have actually really thrived during this, being able to make the PPE. I can't remember the rest of your question.
Do you think that's something that will continue moving forward?
Yes, I do. I think we're going to continue to need PPE into the future for quite some time, and as you're seeing in the schools. So yes, I do think that we will continue to see PPE manufactured in South Carolina, and probably more and more. There's certainly a movement to bring that, all of that back to the U.S. So I think South Carolina has an opportunity to grow in that area.
Right. That gets back to the idea of being well positioned, for manufacturing, period. And certainly in that area, and the fact that there's been so much quick adoption by a number of manufacturers certainly plays to that. For everyone, if you're interested, and thank you, Paige. Paige Stevenson from the United Way of the Piedmont shared in the chat a link to Context's approach to childcare. So that's one example of what's being done around that. And I'm sure there are other examples as well if anyone is interested. And I see that Craig Lundgren has also shared some data information. So thank you, Craig, for folks. So Sarah, I'll ask one more question and see if there's any others from the group. But we've gotten through kind of the initial shock. Things are stabilizing-ish. Certainly issues around, continued, the virus is continuing to be here and will be for a while, I think. In the manufacturing world, as you look forward over the next year, are there a couple elements or things that you think are going to be really crucial that has to be paid attention to by the manufacturers, by our elected officials, by our community in general? What are those hot buttons, those things that you think have to be paid attention to and addressed?
I think the ongoing challenges with unemployment and just getting people back to work, and then is going to be critical, and then liability protection. We're seeing lawsuits popping up in South Carolina and all over the country that are COVID-19 related. And so, there's a lot of exposure there that companies would have never dreamed of. So whatever protections we can do at the state and federal level to provide companies that type of certainty is going to be critical going forward.
Great. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate it. And for those who didn't see it, Sarah did an article about a month ago, I think a little more than a month ago, for our newsletter. Sharon put a link to it in the chat, so you can read that as well. And if you're interested in learning more, we have the contact information we send out about the South Carolina Manufacturers Alliance. So Sarah, thank you so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Terrence?
Thank you again, Sarah. Thank you for giving an update, and it was pertinent information. And just like on a lot of these updates, I always learn something new. Right now, we're going to listen to the 10 at the top updates, and Dean's going to jump in there, and then Michael Hildebrand is going to talk a little bit about what's happening in his world at the Upstate Mobility Alliance. Back to you, Dean.
Great, thank you, Terrence. And I'm gonna, for those who have been with us the last couple times, we've had a quick little poll. So I have two questions today. The first one related to education. If you have school-age children, did you register them for in-person or virtual school? And then the second question, we know that we've had people from all over as part of these, and we want to know what county you reside in, those of you who are on the poll today. So I'm going to launch those, and if you want to go ahead and put in your feedback, we'll share that. We'll see which wins of the in-person or virtual. I know my kids are chomping at the bit. They really are hopeful to get back to the classroom, but others in our office have chosen to have their kids go virtual because the feeling is there's more stability with that. So I'm curious to see how that goes for folks who are school-age kids. So if you'll everybody take a minute, we've got a few more folks who can take the poll and let us know what county you are in. And while that's happening, I will share a couple of things, and we will get into more on this in the next chat on August 13th. But you may have seen that our Young Professionals event, The Peak, has been postponed to 2021. We just felt like you know, we had actually moved it back twice, and we felt like it was not looking good to have that energy of a 300 person event like we have had in the past. So it will be, hopefully we will have the event next March. But in the interim, we're going to have, beginning in September, monthly what we're calling sneak peeks, which will be a 1-hour session for young professionals, run by the young professionals who are part of the committee. And we think that's going to be a pretty neat opportunity for folks to network with each other, to learn about different topics. Each one will be different, and that will be part of the sneak. We won't tell you until a month before or so what the topic is going to be, and I think it will be very interesting. But we're going to have hopefully Jessica Misrandino, who is the chair of that committee, for us as part of the next TATT chat to talk about that. So I notice a lot of people have not taken the poll, but we'll go ahead and I guess some people are incognito. They don't want to tell us where they're from. But first, let's see, in person or virtual, we had 9 with in person and 10 with virtual. So right at, you know, half and half. And then in terms of counties, we've got Greenville and Anderson with a good number, and a few folks from Spartanburg. I know there's some folks from other counties on here because I've seen Dave Doherty and Andrina Powell Baker. So maybe if they don't have school-age kids, they may not have taken the.
That's right, Dean. I didn't take it because I don't have school-age kids. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think
now,
one of the
now that
challenges.
we're doing this, you know, Andrina, these things are a learning experience. So, you know, we should have said, for number 1, had a does not apply answer as well. So we apologize for that. We may try that one again at another time, but that's okay. I think,
you know, I'm not shy at all about saying I'm on the call or where I'm from.
I know you're not, and I know there's several others from other counties. So anyway, well, thank you to everybody who did, and also to others who are with us. So I am going to introduce, and for many of you, you already know him, but for some, it is brand new. Michael Hildebrand. He's been with us now for over 6 months. Believe it or not, he came on as the director of the Upstate Mobility Alliance in January. That effort has been, we called it Connecting Our Future, and has been underway since late 2017. And we are ecstatic that Michael is here, and he's going to share a couple minutes about some of the things the Mobility Alliance has going on, and what is kind of on the docket for them moving forward. Michael?
Thanks, Dean, and thanks everyone for attending today. So I just will give you a couple of really quick updates on a few projects that we're working on. And the first one is something that came out of one of the 10 at the Top programs recently. We heard that the rural counties, one of the barriers they were facing was in transportation. And so we have convened one session, what we're calling our Rural County Transportation Listening Session. And what we really did was we heard from these community and business and political leaders just what kind of impact the lack of transportation is having on their community. And heard a lot of really great feedback, and a lot of it, probably is no surprise, centers around funding and a lack of funding. So we actually have a task force meeting on Monday where we're going to kind of synthesize the information we heard and develop our next steps, which most likely will be some type of program where we bring in people who are experts in funding that can really help these organizations. So that's one project we're working on. Another thing I'm really excited about is we're actually finishing our strategic plan process right now. The leadership committee of the Mobility Alliance, we've had 4 or 5 meetings so far, and we've really worked through some really great information and are finalizing our strategic plan. And after we get it finalized from a leadership committee standpoint, we will then be rolling that out in a more public session where we can get input from all of the community, so we can make sure that we really are pushing in the areas that we need to, that'll have the biggest impact for the upstate. Lastly, I'll just mention that because of COVID, and this has been something that's been good for us, we've started a series of podcasts, and where we talk with people, whether it's a business leader or somebody involved in transportation, but we really do kind of dive deeper into some of the issues that a lack of transportation can cause. So if you've not had a chance to listen to those, they're posted on our website, and we can share a link to that. And if you're interested in being interviewed on the podcast, I'm always looking for people who have either work in transportation, or they have the transportation impacts either their business or their community group. I'm always looking for people who are willing to jump on with me. So if you're interested, just shoot me an email. And so Dean, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michael. And I'm going to wrap up by, we showed it earlier, the list of our leadership level funding partners. You know, I've said it before, we are very fortunate. We have about 100 funding partners overall, 20 of which are our leadership level, highest level partners. And we have been very fortunate this year with all the disruptions and concerns that funding has not been an issue we've had to worry about in terms of keeping our doors open right now. And that's because of you all who are our funding partners and supporters, especially those at the leadership level, but really at all levels. And so I again want to thank all of our funding partners and supporters for all you do to help our organization. And hopefully you see through the work we've been doing the impact that we're trying to have to help play a role in supporting the upstate during this challenging time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sharon Purvis for our county updates. And we have some new folks as part of that today. So we thank those of you who are with us doing the county updates most especially. So Sharon?
Yeah, we never end up going quite in the order that you see it on the agenda. So it'll jump around a little bit. Before I get to the county updates, I just want to point out in the chat, I posted a link to Michael's interviews, his podcast interviews. So you can listen to all of his interviews there at that link. For our county updates, first up from Anderson County, we have Faith Line, who is the director of the Anderson County Libraries. I've realized during this COVID situation that the libraries really do a whole lot more than just check out books. And Faith is going to talk a bit about what's going on from her perspective there at the library. And while she's talking, I'm going to post in the comments an article, a question and answer article that was done with a couple of other librarians from across the upstate. So Faith, why don't you tell us what's going on with you?
Great, thanks Sharon, I appreciate that. Libraries are open. We're here to serve, and we're happy to do it. I think across the state, almost all libraries are open. Some are still closed, but in the upstate, most of us are open and serving our patrons. And Sharon's right. We do check out books and materials, but we also have online resources that people aren't always aware of. You can check out ebooks, e-audio books, so you can listen to them. We have a lot of databases that if you're doing, talking about school and going back to school for the kids, we have all these resources for the kids to do their homework with. So check with your local library if you're not from Anderson and get that password so you can actually get in and get help for the kids. But also even you want to buy a new car, we have consumer reports online that you can download and look at the latest best car, genealogy, just lots of different things that we have that you can provide it. We also have computers that we have available for patrons that come in and are looking for jobs. That's one of the first things that we had requests for when we were getting ready to reopen was, will you have computers, and can we stay and do them? And yes, we provide those. Whether you're looking for a job, filing for unemployment, or just want to keep in touch with family members somewhere else, they can do it at the library, and it's all here for you. And libraries are also checking out other materials. We are checking out fishing poles. We got a grant from Duke Energy and you can actually come in and check out a fishing pole to go fishing. We're getting ready to open up our seed library so that people can plant and grow their own food. And through the South Carolina park system, we have park passes that they can check out and go visit all the South Carolina state parks. So amazing things going on in your public library. Visit us here at Anderson or in your local library.
Thank you so much, Faith. Next, it says we're going to Greenville, but Alicia, are you on? I'm not seeing you. But if you are one of those phone numbers, Alicia, if you'll speak up from Lawrence, we may have to skip Alicia too. Yeah, I'm not seeing her. Sorry about that. So we're going to skip to Joanne Johnson from Oconee County. She is the president of the director of the Oconee County Chamber of Commerce, and she is a busy woman, so I appreciate her joining us today. Hi, Joanne.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Yeah, so in Oconee, we're doing the best that we can. It's interesting. If I talk about maybe some of the challenges and then the positive things, of course, we're just like you, up against the same challenges that you are with COVID and the restrictions on, we can't have events and maybe business after hours. We can't do those kind of things. So we were very blessed this morning to be able to attend a ribbon cutting. So yay, that was something great to be in person. Everybody had their mask on and they were so happy to see each other. It was fabulous. But what I can say is in Oconee County that I think that's really, really awesome is that the attitude of everybody is still so high, that these are creative people. These are people that aren't going to let them be taken down by something like all of this. They're out there being very creative, thinking outside the box, just trying to rise to the challenge. And I'm so proud of our county because all of us know this is hard. This is completely unprecedented, and everything we're going through right now, there is not a playbook for this. And we're all just trying to do the very best that we can do. But our restaurants, are at half capacity right now. And business is down, but it's not out. And I just expect us to come back stronger than ever before. And in regard to the chamber specifically, what I've tried to do is to be, again, I'm using the word creative, but to create a news channel. And I've been very fortunate to have all of our legislators come on and let me interview them, as well as most of the heads of government agencies throughout South Carolina. And that's been an attempt to just keep our members and the community in Oconee County as informed as possible on things like, PPP and the EIDL loans and just all of that good stuff. And it's been going very, very well.
Joanne, I'm going to sneak in here before Sharon gets back and just say I have been on a number of your podcasts, and they are tremendous. You have done a wonderful job, and I have enjoyed all of them. And I think everybody else has as well as, it has kept folks knowledgeably engaged with leaders from Oconee County and across the country or across the state. So thank you so much for doing that. And as someone who is, located here in the Greer Greenville area and wants to be connected over in Oconee and know what's going on, that has been a great resource to be able to kind of hear about, especially early on when you had the tornado and everything else happening too. But congratulations on doing such a great job with those, and they have definitely been a very positive thing, and hopefully they have been something that your members have shared, have been helpful for them as well.
Thank you so much for saying that. I have to say one thing, and I don't mean this to tout myself as much as the news program, and I feel very honored, and there's several folks that are on the call today who have assisted with that news program, but we did have one of our sponsors, and her husband was self-employed and not able to get any PPP or the EIDL loan and couldn't get unemployment. And because of that program, I was able to sit with her and counsel her
and connect her to the right people. And I just recently received an email from her dean, and she said, almost in tears in the email, and she said, we got all of that money. We got all of it. And I thought, thank God. I mean, you know, just to know every now and again that we impact people in some small way, and all of us, you know, we're all working so hard, and it takes a village. And I think sometimes we can get very frustrated and sad because we're all facing the same challenges that our members and our community is. But when we just get those words of encouragement, that means more to me, Dean, than you have any idea. So thank you for that.
Great. Well, thanks. And Sharon, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, I did see Whitney Hanna has arrived. And if you have children in school in Greenville County, you are definitely going to want to hear from Whitney. And because she has way more than just a couple of minutes worth of stuff to say, while she's talking, I'm going to post some links to her, to the Greenville County website, just and the parent portal, so that you can have lots more information than what she's able to give us in the short time we have today. But Whitney, if you there you go, you're unmuted, so you can go ahead and tell us what's going on.
Thanks, Sharon, and thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Whitney Hanna. I serve as coordinator of community collaboration for Greenville County Schools, and there's a lot going on right now, but I think hitting some of the highlights, Greenville County Schools obviously has expanded our virtual program to be K through 12 for this coming year. The deadline for applying for that virtual program was this past Monday. And as of right now, I mean, the application is still open and there's a waiting, so it starts on the waiting list process. And we have about 23,000 students who have registered for the virtual program, which is about 30% of our district. So that was a little bit larger than we anticipated. So that was really interesting, and that sort of thing. So for those that did not choose the virtual plan, we have our flex attendance plan. Hopefully you've seen some information about that. I won't go through all the details, but we have a scalable plan in place that would allow us to go from 100% e-learning all the way up to 5 days in person, with also a 1 day in person option and a 2 day in person option if needed as well. And so obviously the days that if we are not in the physical building, students would be doing e-learning. That e-learning will look very different in this coming school year than it did as an emergency stopgap at the end of last school year. And I'll just say this, and I hope everyone has heard this and knows this, but our absolute desire and goal is to be 5 days in person as soon as it's safe to do so for both students and staff. That is what we are working towards. That is what we want as educators, and that's what we know our students need. So everything we can to do that. And so there's always a lot of detailed questions about what will school look like and what will be required, and just 1,000+ questions. And so we have a parent resource guide on our website. If you go to our homepage, I know Sharon is going to share some links, but if you go to our homepage, there's 2 tabs at the top. One is about the virtual program. The other one is return to school. And that has a ton of resources, flyers, a detailed resource guide, summaries, and FAQs and videos and that sort of thing. We've been hosting Facebook Live chats on our Facebook around all these different topics, and those are recorded, and you can look on that as well. And these resources are available in Spanish as well. So trying to provide as much information, and we've been rolling it out as we go, as fast as we can get through all the details, and are continuing to kind of try to help answer questions as we go. But those are the resources. And there is we've started a call center for email and for phone calls to answer parents' questions on a daily basis. It's we have a team normally, and we have greatly expanded that team for this time right now. So I'll leave it with that. That's really high level, but if there's any specific questions that anyone would like me to try and answer, I'm happy to do that. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Whitney. That I did post the link to the resource guide in the chat, as well as the parent information page. So, and also on our COVID, what is it called? The repository, information repository. We do have it. Look, if you click on the county tab, we do have links to all of the school districts. And so their information will be there on those. And also we have a map. If you look at our resource map, and I'll put links to these in the chat as well, on our resource map, the resource map of the schools in the upstate. It does not appear that Alicia has joined us, so I'm going to go to, we have with us, Susan Cohen from the Clemson Chamber of Commerce, and she is going to share with us what is going on down in her neck of the woods. Thank you so much for joining us, Susan. She was here.
She's here.
Maybe she's not unmuted.
You gotta mute her. Unmute.
She was having technical difficulties. Susan, can you unmute yourself? She's talking. Uh-oh. Justine, can you unmute her? There she is. Okay.
I don't think you can.
Yep, we can now. We can hear you now.
Hang on.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Although there's a little bit of an echo, but we can hear you.
I think you need to just use my phone. It's the 1600 number.
Okay. Okay. That number is unmuted, Susan, so go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, and no echo. Excellent.
Yay.
Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I've been technology challenged today. So I appreciate it. It's been interesting to listen to a couple of the comments from others on the call, on the meeting, because I know Michael mentioned something about transportation. We were talking about that, and that has been an ongoing conversation, not just in Pickens County, but kind of our tri-county area here. It's come up in almost every meeting. That became very obvious as we navigated through all of the COVID-related issues, that public transportation or affordable transportation for people was an issue. So fortunately, after one of the calls previously, I believe it was a 10 at the top call, I was contacted by Enterprise and unaware that they have a program called Commute with Enterprise. So we are looking into that option, and we'll be having a presentation by them in a couple of weeks for our Oconee Pickens Anderson Chamber Coalition. So if anybody would like to sit in on that, I can send you the link to that. It's a pretty interesting concept, and they are using it in other parts of the state. So I'm curious to see if it will help, if nothing else, bridge some gaps in getting some of our people to other public transportation that's available, again, Oconee County, but in the Seneca area, and also here in Clemson and around our area through CATBus and some other entities. So that's been a big conversation. Obviously, broadband here is still a big conversation, as it hit us pretty hard with kids trying to access school. So we're really focusing on how do we overcome. Our biggest thing is to overcome the fact that we are so reliant on what happens with Clemson University. You know, there are times when we get frustrated that we are not seen as two entities, both the city and the university. But in this case, there's certainly kind of one and the same in terms of what we've been able to do, what our businesses are experiencing. So whereas other areas have had a little bit stronger recovery, that has not necessarily been the case here. So we at the Chamber have been trying to provide as many resources and information as possible too. And I have Clemson, Pendleton Central, and 6 Mile. I know Pendleton's in Anderson County. But even into Anderson County and all the way over to the Pickens County line and Easley, we know that when big events, football games, things like that are going on, it certainly affects all of us because of the influx of people we have. So initially, we basically become a tourism destination. Someone else mentioned tourism. And that's a big part of where this economy, succeeds or fails. And we lost so many events in the spring. Everybody has focused on football, but from the time the students did not come back from spring break until now, we've lost, just an ongoing series of events, from graduation, orientation, student visits, spring sports, summer school. All of those things have just kind of rolled into a larger impact that some people have not really thought about in terms of how it's hit this community. There are literally almost double the number of students as there are local residents here on a regular basis. So if you just look at all of the restrictions some of our businesses have had on what they are able to, who they are able to serve, their capacity, the restaurants only being able to seat 50%. So the city has worked very well with us to help in every way possible to provide additional opportunities for seating, allowing them to serve alcohol in that seating, some other things like that, to just try and expand the capabilities within the restrictions that we've been given. So a lot of those issues we are still working through, and this last week's announcement that the students still would not come back for on-campus courses until September was just kind of that next wave. So we're working through that. We're hoping that we can prove to the locals how much our local restaurants and businesses have done to embrace the safety precautions and guidelines that they've been given. We feel very confident in what they have done because so many of them are owner operated that, of course, they're protecting themselves as well. So all of the mask ordinances, all of the other things we've really embraced, and we're hoping that we can do a continued outreach to make the surrounding area feel comfortable coming back in and re-emphasize to them how much we need their business and support right now. But those are kind of the big things that we're focusing on in this area.
Thank you, Susan, and thanks to all of our county updates. And I'm sorry that that we have not gotten to hear from Alicia. We will try to circle back with her next time and get Lauren's included. I'm going to post a link to Joanne's interviews for you, and then I'm going to turn it over to Terrence to close us out.
My wife always tells me she likes that mute button. Hit the red button, hit the red button. But as I was saying, thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Dean, and your team for leading us through these chats. I'm always walk away from here knowing something a little bit more about our community and our state. And I hope you will continue to follow us. We will be engaged throughout the remainder of the year. And hopefully this continues to bring value. So again, enjoy your weekend, stay safe. Wash your hands, stay 6 feet apart, and wear your mask. Have a good day.
Thank you, Terrence. Thanks, everybody.